When watching a scary movie, one thing that brings us all a peace of mind is simply knowing at the end of the day, it's just a mix of great makeup, special effects, good writers, and simply movie magic. But what if one of these scariest movies is based off of a true story? Then is it still movie magic or real life possession? If you ask anyone, what are your top 3 scariest movies? And y'all can tell me down below. I'm sure majority of people will mention The Exorcist somewhere in there. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Because this movie wasn't just genius writers coming together to portray a story, there was real life inspiration that helped craft this movie to make sure that art imitates life. And this dark tale all starts with a young boy and a Ouija board. Hello you all, I'm BlaqueWitchYaya. Thank you so much for tuning into this video. And today we are in the Belnor neighborhood of St. Louis, Missouri. And here lives a 13-year-old boy by the name of Ronald Doe. But his real name is Ronald Huckler. His family is German American, and the reason why there are so many mix-ups when it comes to his name is because his identity wasn't revealed until 70 years after the actual exorcism that took place. And we'll learn more about that later on in the video. But if you were to go to school with Ronald and ask his teachers and his fellow classmates about him, they wouldn't necessarily describe him as a bad kid, but he had a lot of energy. He had a hard time focusing, which I'm sure in today's time he would have been labeled as he has ADHD, which I notice is a stamp that's placed on a lot of kids with certain spiritual awareness, but we'll talk more about that later on. So Ronald was a hyper kid like most, and he was close with his family. In particular, he was close with his Aunt Tilly. So a little bit more about Aunt Tilly. She was a spiritualist, and she taught Ronald about different things beyond a classroom or the life lessons that an aunt would teach you in general. She shared her knowledge about spirits, death, ghosts, and how to use a Ouija board. So from there, he started to tap into his own spirituality as far as a young kid can possibly go and understand what they're doing. So even before his aunt passed, he started to notice strange things around the house, almost as if he was receiving warning signs that something was about to happen. Maybe not a warning that his aunt was about to pass, but just something was about to happen. Something was off. It was a different presence in the house. One night, and these accounts are all from a priestess diary that attended Rollins' exorcism. So on January 15th, and this entire story takes place in the late 1940s, Rollin and his grandmother heard water leaking, but no signs of where it could be coming from, and no signs of water actually being leaked onto the floor. So when they look around to see, okay, do we see any wet puddles? There was nothing there. And then later that day, he stated hearing scratching noises under his floorboards. And remember these reoccurring scratching noises for later on. And there was a picture of Jesus on the wall in the home that would randomly start shaking. Now this went on for 10 days. Then 3 days of silence would occur. Then 3 more days would consist of squeaking shoes on his bed. He hears it but doesn't see it. Then on January 26th, his aunt passed away. So you would think all of these signs and weird happenings would stop once the aunt passed away, because maybe it was just signs from spirit that someone was about to leave in the family. But everything after his Aunt Tilly's death intensified. So Rollins' mom and grandmother all thought this must be the aunt trying to communicate with them now. Okay, she warned us that she was about to leave, so now she's trying to communicate with us. So the first question the mom asked was, if this is Aunt Tilly, knock 3 times. A big gust of wind suddenly started blowing in the house, and 3 knocks came from underneath the floorboard where the Ouija was placed. Then for reassurance, next the mom asked, if you are Aunt Tilly, positively tell me by knocking 4 times. Then 4 knocks were heard in the same spot. Then scratching noises came from Rollins' room again. So this continued to happen, and Rollins' mother grew concerned because she noticed that only these type of things would happen when Rollins was near. When he's at school, hanging out with his friends, the home is silent, it's still, nothing is going on. So on February 17th, Rollins went to stay at a parsonage where Minister Reverend Schultz lived. The Reverend wanted to see did the occurrences happen even if he was away from home. He wanted to pay close attention to Rollin to see what was going on because his mom believed that the aunt's spirit was haunting Rollin. And of course, that night while sleeping, the priest noticed strange occurrences happening close to Rollin. First, he heard scratching sounds close to Rollin and vibration sounds coming from the bed so loud that it knocked over a nearby chair. So this continued on, and 10 days later, the scratching went from being just a noise to actual marks on Rollin's body. There were random scratches placed on random spots of his body, and these weren't just random scratches that you may do to yourself because you had a mosquito bite, so you may have scratched a little bit too hard. These scratches looked like they came from someone's claws. So Ronald's mom noticed, okay, it's going from seeing things to hearing things. Now you're being physically touched. I need to go seek more help. So that's what she did. She went to visit St. James Catholic Church in Mount Rainier, where Father Albert Hughes, who told her to simply pray, bless the home with some holy water, and light some candles. Which seems a little bit too simple for what Ronald has going on, but she did just that. But I guess it wasn't strong enough because once she followed his instructions, a random comb flew from across the room, knocking the candles over. And that wasn't the only sudden movement of objects. Fruit flew across the room, the dining room table flipped over upside down by itself, and a Bible flew across the room, landing right at Roland's feet. And sorry y'all if I go from Roland to Rollins, I don't know why I'm bouncing back and forth, but the 13-year-old boy. When the mom tried to fill up a bottle of holy water, it flew right out of her hand and wasted, but the glass bottle did not break. Now some of this may sound like, okay, this is a lot, but reports are showing it's believed by so many people because it was all noted in a priest's diary. And why would a priest lie, right? When have we ever known a priest to lie? So Rolland's mother felt like she had no other choice but to get Rolland re-baptized. She's like, okay, if nothing else works, a re-baptism should. But during the baptism, Rolland went mad. He started yelling and freaking out, shaking. So she just wanted him out the home at this point because she thought maybe he was being triggered by something in the area. So he went to stay with relatives. But then when he went to stay with relatives, I guess whatever was on him, we don't know yet, followed him, and the scratches started to reappear. Then it was brand marks that appeared on his body as well. And this eventually led Rolland to have a 3-day stay at the Georgetown University Hospital. And this started the first of many exorcisms that would occur. The first priest to perform it was Father Hughes, the one from before who just told the mom, bless your home with holy water, some candles, and pray. He did the first exorcism. So, of course, it did not work the first time because Rolland was initially bind to the bed, but he slipped out the binds that were holding his hands down, ripped the spring out of the mattress, and used it to slice the arm of the priest, which of course made him stop the entire process because he didn't know how much physical harm would happen to him during the entire exorcism. If this is happening in the beginning, once the demon is out, what's going to happen? So after that, the priest just stayed to himself, away from the public, away from people, away from his friends for several years due to the amount of trauma that he faced. There aren't many details as to what else he actually seen, but people are just associating with maybe he never got physically harmed or cut or seeing a young boy in that manner, or he knew it was something that he couldn't handle. But that didn't stop others from trying because March 10th, a priest by the name of Father Bishop, and he brought back up another priest by the name of Father Bowden, came to pay Rolland a visit where they both joined together to pray for Rolland and blessed him with a piece of bone from the forearm of Saint Francis Xavier. It serves as a tangible connection to the saint and his holy works. Believers venerate the relic to honor Saint Francis Xavier and seek his intercession and prayers. So during this process of the exorcism, there were relatives of Rolland who was there as well. Now remember earlier I told you that Rolland's mom sent him to stay with relatives. So of course, in many cases when it comes to families, once one relative knows, the whole family knows. So for this exorcism, there was about 49 people who witnessed the possession of Rolland. Once everything was over, loud banging from Rolland's room could be heard from all the way down the hall. And when a relative was brave enough to finally open the door to see what was going on, they saw an overturned table, overturned bench, moved bookcase, The bone that was given to him before from the Saint Xavier was all the way on the other side of the room, and the bed was shaking, and Ronald was screaming, "Aunt Tilly, please stop, stop, leave me alone, stop." I wonder why Aunt Tilly had a thing for throwing stuff and flipping stuff across the room, but that's besides the point. But anywho, a few days later, the second exorcism took place from the same two priests from before, Bishop and Bowden, but that again did not work. And then from there, it was a whole lot of moving going on. They kept sending Ronald to different priests because no one could seem to get what was ever in him out. During these exorcism attempts, the same scratches would appear. He would yell and curse at the priest like in the movie, and he would also pee, puke, poop, all of the pees in bed. He will also yell in Latin, even though on a normal day-to-day basis, he did not know a lick of Latin. Now, something else that happened, these scratches that were randomly appearing on Rollin formed into what looked like a picture of the devil with webs coming from his arm. And then an X would appear on the chest, which was a signal to the priest that there were up to 10 demons possessing Rollin. Now let's fast forward to the last ritual that took place on April 18th, 1949, performed by Father Bowden and watched by Rollin's family members, all 49 of them. And one of the goals of Bowden was to figure out what exactly was possessing Ronald. Well, not so much what, but who. From his curiosity, the answer that was given to him was that the person possessing Rollin was one of the fallen angels. The priest in response shouted back, "I am Saint Michael. I command you, Satan, and the other evil spirits to leave this body in the name of Dominus immediately." Rollin experienced one final massive, seems like a muscle spasm all over his body. Then he just collapsed to the bed. Once he was able to catch his breath and gather his words, he looked at the priest and whispered, "He is gone." So that seemed to be the conclusion of his possession. Now let's talk about the home really quick. The home that all of this was taking place in, they said it was burned down. They said it was an accidental fire, but then it's also reported that the fire marshals burned down the home themselves because this word spread across town and everyone's afraid that this home possessed a bunch of demons that could start hopping into other people, because this was still relatively new at the time. Like exorcism weren't as common as they would be today, because they're like, oh my God, spirit, ghost, how did this happen? Let's just burn the house down so we don't have to deal with it. And then it's also reported that Rollin went on to live a normal life. He lived up to an old age, but different reports say different things. But the most common one is from there, he just went on to live a normal life. The final exorcism finally worked. Now, this exorcism took place in 1949, but the final details was not released until 1983. But before those final details were combed out and released, in 1973, the movie The Exorcism was released based on word of mouth of what happened. But the final report of what exactly happened with all the details remains a mystery locked away in the Roman Catholic archives. So there are a few things that are different from what happened in real life with what happened in the movie, with all movies that's based on a real life story. So I'll link a few videos down below that shows the breakdown of Ronald's story and actually a comparison with Ronald's story and Reagan's story, the real life situation compared to the movie. So I also wanted to touch on a few points that came up throughout the story that I feel play a vital role with understanding possession in general and spirituality. One being ADHD and spirituality. Ronald possibly in today's time would be labeled as having ADHD by the way he's described in his behavior in school. Now, I am not a mental health professional at all, but one thing I noticed, and I'll keep it short, is that sometimes kids with special gifts or talents usually get diagnosed with ADHD or autism, and I noticed that a lot within the spiritual community, where people try to label them as having a mental health issue because they may see things or hear things or just think differently that's too far in advance, and they just operate differently than other kids their age, which I could understand, because in comparison to other children, they may view the world a little bit differently because they have a little bit more behind their eyesight, we would say a spiritual eye. Now, I wish there was a mental health professional who can help guide spiritual gifts within the youth rather than just trying to medicate them. And it's because I feel like they can lose it if they try to compress what they have going on and not exploring it with the proper guidance, because to me that's the best time, because by the time you're older you'll be able to master it because you've been at it and you've been trying to understand it since you were little. And I see that in adults sometimes too, when humans may see things or hear things. Some people will call them crazy, but sometimes they may actually be seeing or hearing things that they can't comprehend because maybe they're not in the spiritual world. They think all that stuff is make-believe, so they can't come up with a logical reason for it, so it literally drives them crazy, and that can scare a person and cause them to freak out. Or sometimes people really do have mental health issues, and sometimes people who may be too religious or too spiritual go straight to, oh my God, they're possessed by a demon. I wish there was a happy medium between the two. Another point I would like to touch on, there aren't any language barriers in the spiritual realm. And I wanted to mention that because in the story I mentioned how Ronald was talking in Latin, but in his normal mind he didn't know a lick of Latin. And this is important to know because when you are communicating with spirit, or you're with a tarot reader or a medium, let's just say if your grandmother only spoke Spanish and you go to an English speaking tarot reader or a medium, they will still be able to communicate with your grandmother and understand her and deliver that message to you, because in the spiritual realm, language doesn't work the same way that it does on earth. So she could be speaking pure Spanish, but it'll be translated and commuted to the way that the person who's reading you can translate it to you. The messages flow differently. So don't think, oh my gosh, my mom was Haitian, so she only spoke Creole. I have to find a Creole speaking tarot reader. I mean, it'll be nice, of course, but you will still be able to receive the message. Language doesn't work the same way. Another point I want to touch on is, why is it so important to know the demon's name that is possessing you? And you guys may remember this in my demon house video where the priest told the family to find out what demon was in their house causing all the trouble, because once you are able to identify what demon is doing what, you're able to call it by name and actually work with it directly. Because you could think of a demon being like, la 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 la, I can't hear you, you're not talking to me, you don't know my name, so you're telling me to leave, but who are you talking to? It's 10 of us up in here. Having their name and working directly, having direct energy will make the ritual stronger of the removal of the demon. And the last point, waking up with scratches. So I'm sure a few of you guys have woken up before with random scratches on your body, and there is a deeper reason behind this besides you may physically do it to yourself and you just didn't know you were scratching yourself that hard. Some spiritual traditions believe that waking up with unexplained scratches could be a sign of negative energy or spiritual attacks, which we see was true in this case with all the scratches popping up on him. This could be interpreted as a malevolent spirit or entity attempting to harm or disturb you during your sleep, which is one of your most vulnerable times. Or on the other hand, these scratches might be seen as warnings or signs from protective spiritual forces alerting you of potential dangers or negative influence in your life. They could serve as a reminder to be more mindful of your spiritual interactions and well-being, and to protect yourself through prayer, meditation, and other spiritual practices from spiritual and physical attacks from those around you. Scratches can also symbolize inner turmoil or conflict. This could be a manifestation of your subconscious mind dealing with unresolved emotional or psychological issues. And in lighter cases, this could be your ancestors trying to get your attention, because you never feel when the scratches occur. They never burn when you put like hand sanitizer on or something, or when you shower, but you just see them. So sometimes they could be like, hey, I need your attention. I've been trying to communicate with you. You've been ignoring me. So it could be something just to get your attention. Like, okay, she's not listening to me, but she's going to look at her shoulder in the mirror when she get up and she's going to see these scratches. But thank you guys so much for tuning into this video. And this has been a recap of the real life story that inspired the film The Exorcism. Should we explore more exorcism cases, or should we just leave this alone? Let me know down below. And like I always say, as above, so below, as within, so without, as universal, the soul. Until next time, you guys, I'm straight.